The Conjuring remains as one of the most renowned horror movies of all time that ruined playing hide-and-seek clap version for all of us. But if we're being honest, nobody was ever playing that game as we weren't living in castles, and if you clapped while hiding in a 2-bedroom house, well, the game would be over instantly. And while franchising in horror movies has been a thing for more than a century now, almost every other release of the Conjuring universe has flopped. Well, flopped in a sense where it sucked. Not flopped where the producers didn't make any money. Oh, no. They made bank every single time. Why do you think they keep making these movies? Not for your entertainment. The thing is, they've had a good thing going, and then they created a few side characters like Annabelle and Valak. And what this does is it creates spin-offs, like when Saul got his own show after Breaking Bad. Except there, Better Call Saul was so good, Breaking Bad kind of became the spin-off, or everybody started thinking that was the spin-off. Whoa, calm down. Okay, fine. They're both really good in incomparable ways. Happy? But you see, with horror movies, this doesn't always work. Actually, it almost never works. The Nun, Annabelle, Curse of Leonardo DiCaprio. Most movies these days are just being made in hopes that they become franchises. Because franchising means easy movie, more money. And all they need to do is to get you hooked on one horror movie and then feed you bits of it, and it doesn't even have to be that good. The premise is enough to sell tickets. From the producers of the Conjuring Universe. Before the Conjuring, there was. Witness the darkest chapter in the Conjuring Universe. And then suddenly we started getting more of the same ideas in cinematic universe called Conjuring, and the movies just kept on deteriorating to the point where we stopped being excited about sequels, and when we hear about them, it usually ruins our day. Look, if I wanted to watch some cinematic universe slop, I'd just watch Marvel. Horror was never supposed to be a universe. That's the whole idea of horror. Once you make it a universe, it's not horror anymore, because then we already know what it is, and horror is supposed to be unknown, unexpected, vague. But now it's just part of what happened before, only different. And since we already know what to expect, we can't really get scared unless you throw in a cheap jump. Walked right into that one, huh? And yeah, the only entertainment value left is this, the jump scare, but as I said, it's cheap, lazy, it has almost no entertainment value. Well, maybe a little. And you might say, why can Marvel and DC do it? Why not Valak too? See, in superhero movies, you can have different fight scenes, rescues, cool CGI, new enemies that try to destroy the world, old villains but stronger that, again, try to destroy the world, epic scenes and emotional moments. And did I say villains that try to destroy the world? So it almost always is fresh. Now imagine you try to apply the same formula to horror. What happens is horror becomes predictable, formulated, and boring. If there was one formula for math that you just put in and you can always solve for X, no matter what it is, like every single formula is just based on that one and you get the answer, that's it. Then we wouldn't really call it math, would we? We would just call it not math. And it's not just the predictability, right? It's also the fact how knowing something bad couldn't possibly ever happen to the main characters, because it's a cinematic universe. And the cinematic universe needs those guys. So it's a theme now. They've got a plot armor. Like the possibility of something horrifying maybe happening to someone is what gives horror horror. It's what makes us squint our eyes in anticipation or reach for the pillow because something scary is about to happen. In horror, you want new ideas, fresh ones, not to see the same people fight off yet another demon they claim to be the worst they have faced yet. So why did Conjuring 1 and maybe even the second one work so well? For instance, the girl banging her head against the closet door seems creepy enough, I like it, but you could have never guessed that there was going to be a witch on top of it and that we're gonna super fastly zoom in on her smiling face, like whoa, talk about making me uncomfortable. But that's not all. It also had warmth, something that started to disappear with each addition to the universe. comedic moments, like where the cop and the cameraman guy argue if the door shut because of just a draft or no draft or a draft. What do you think happened? The toilet scene, for instance, cooking pancakes and having fun together, all of which was organic and made the movie feel like a conversation more than insert villain here and here is a jump scare, enjoy. So a sequel of such a successful movie was surely to be expected. And guess what? As I said before, James Wan, the fact that he was going to direct the second movie already kind of gave us a hint that it was gonna be a very good horror movie. Because here's the thing, James Wan has a philosophy that if a horror movie is unique or it tells a new story, he'll do it. If it doesn't have those elements, he will not touch them. And you can see that in the Saw movies, you know, he doesn't direct any of them. He does direct Conjuring 1 and 2. He does direct Insidious 1 and 2 again, but you can tell those movies are very distinct from their previous predecessors, right? And yeah, Conjuring 2 was still a unique movie, and some people even prefer it to the first. There was a creepy nun demon, which is completely new. Lorraine has a premonition. Wait, will her husband survive or not? A perfect anticipation moment. And it had a crazy twist too. And while it didn't have the same warmth and friendliness of the first movie, it was still cozy enough to cook pancakes and play the guitar. Sorry, I just recently woken up. Annabelle paid me a visit last night after I finished filming. It said that, look, we know that you're trying to do a Conjuring video, that the universe sucks, that the movies aren't good. We're preparing for phase 2. And if you're to publish this video, things are gonna go very badly for you. I'm gonna take a risk and publish it anyway. I don't care. Look, Annabelle, whatever it is, Valak could come. Annabelle did mention that Valak would also be here. I don't know if they're a gang or something, but I would really appreciate if you like and subscribe the video. You know, if I have more of you supporting me, then it might help me survive. Thank you so much. But you wanna know exactly when we were doomed with this whole Conjuring Universe thing? I researched this and I couldn't find much, but I did have a hunch on what might have happened. Now note that this is only based on a true story. It's not true. I'm not saying it's true, but it is based on a true story. Here's what happened. In the first 5 seconds of the first movie, you can tell we were doomed immediately. You see, the studio had hired a couple of interns for summer. Because Conjuring 1 was such a success, the interns were told, sit down and watch the first movie and go over it and see if there's anything that we could use, maybe as a spin-off, to make more money. Sorry, movies. And the interns were told to be creative, you know, just feel free to write down whatever. It could even be a hairbrush. So later, they bring this list to that one executive who recently had bought himself a new yacht because, well, his old yacht started to smell like a little sea-ish, you know, that salty water smell. And well, that guy, he hates the sea smell, so he had to get himself a new yacht. Anyway, immediately at the start of the list, he sees that they wrote Annabelle, the creepy doll, and he didn't even look at the rest of the list. He just said, let's start shooting immediately tomorrow. Done. And hey, look, I know they said last rites, as in it's gonna be the last Conjuring movie, but then they gave some interview and they made some very confusing statements about the Conjuring universe, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the important thing is that there might be a movie about a haunted toothbrush someday, so don't count it out just yet. So what happened in the third movie, you know, The Devil Made Me Do It, that, you know, kind of didn't work, that made the fans say, well, that wasn't such a good movie. But the thing is, the movie wasn't anything like the first or the second. It was a fresh idea. It was unique. What went wrong here? First of all, it's called The Devil Made Me Do It. Made you do what? Oh, wait a second. Oh, and the movie is spoiled. Even before we get to watch it. Cool. No, that's the twist though. The devil made him do it. Right, where's the twist? You know, did it? Did it what? That the devil made him do it. I don't know, did it? Exactly. Okay, so it's not really a horror movie, but it's a detective movie. But the spoiler in the title was not enough. We needed to be spoiled a second time, which is why within the first few minutes, Lorraine gets flashbacks of some weird ritual and we already know there's a person behind it all. So now the rest is just Sherlock Holmes. The movie could have just been called The Conjuring 3 if Sherlock Holmes was a parapsychologist, because that's all that happens. I respect that they tried something new, but there just wasn't anything new. I mean, there was, sort of, but it wasn't good. After having seen the third movie, honestly, I kind of wish they had done another haunted house movie instead. And I'm not saying all horror movie sequels are bad, because let's say you're playing darts and you throw 100 darts. One of them is bound to hit the bullseye. It doesn't mean that all 99 of those were great shots. And if you do enough horror movies, one of them is bound to be great. Like Annabelle Creation, which I'll be honest, I really enjoyed. It was uniquely terrifying, but it doesn't really change any of the things that we've talked about so far. And to prove my point, here is the last installment of the Conjuring Universe. No villains from the past. So it's gotta be fresh, right? But notice how the movie is basically a recycled and unnecessarily stretched out version of the first one. The premise isn't fresh. Once again, it's an old object with a possession attached. In the first one, it was the closet. In the second one, it was the couch. Now it's the mirror. The house once again has a super dark history, which means there are ghosts that can be used to distract from the real evil. Again, we already had that in the second movie. Anyone who's a horror fan is immediately gonna be able to tell those, that ghostly figure that was hunting them down with an axe was kind of maybe a distraction, because he was like haunting them, but he could never really do them harm, Right when he was going to hit someone with the axe, there was just a cutscene, and then next we saw them, they were just scared. Which immediately, if you remember the second movie even a little bit, that there was this demon that was using the old man to kind of, keep them busy so that she could not be detected. The setup also left no anticipation for the viewer. Okay, let's take this scene for instance. The phone cable gets pulled by the girls. And I am almost 100% certain everyone rolled their eyes, because let's face it, we all knew that there'd be a moment where the phone cable was gonna be pulled in, but this time the room was gonna be empty. Wait, do we have insane sixth sense? Could it be that we're all just some psychics? No, you're not. And neither am I. Thing is, once again, they already did that with the hide-and-seek clapping game. And since this is just a copy-paste of that movie, we immediately knew our brain is so good at recognizing patterns. What really irritates me is that they didn't even try to hide it. Like, even the opening scene starts out practically the same as Conjuring 1, with the music and the chaos in the house, with a big family. Here's the thing, it's all about making the viewer feel some sort of nostalgia. Look, this is like the first movie, even the scares. You like that kind of stuff, don't you? Let's feed you some more of that. Yeah, that's it. Whatever happened to that young group of people going to the woods and then they get hunted one by one, or some strange possessed demon or being is haunting them or confusing them, and they start, turning against each other, and we don't know who's gonna drop next. It could be any of them, and that's the thrill, that's the exciting part, that's kind of part of the horror, that something could possibly happen. Recycling horror movies is just lazy, and that's also exactly why we're unlikely to ever have another great, wow, creepy, insanely good horror movie inside of a franchise. But why is Last Rites not the last? Why call it Last Rites if it's not gonna be the last one? I don't know. But in an interview, they mentioned that this was only phase 1. Phase 1. I don't know if any of you viewers or, anybody out there knew about phases, but yeah, apparently there are phases for horror movies. So this was only phase 1, the 10 years of movies of Conjuring Universe. Hey, it's not over yet. Conjuring continues. So even when they say it's the last, it's not really the last. Well, this is the last one, so enjoy it while it's here. Let's go. One last face-off. Be ready. Watch it. Pay for it. Because it's the last one, baby. New Line studio boss Richard Brenner apparently stated, and I quote, "It's testing through the roof, and we're only at the director's cut, the 10-week part of the movie where you're normally very, very scared about the status of your film. We're very early in the process, have very preliminary visual effects, but it's already through the roof. So while this is the last of what we call phase 1, we are hopeful that we can make more." Cool. Can't wait to get the same story in different settings. And have zero anticipation. That sounds amazing. Woohoo! You know what else he said in that interview? "We take our sequels very seriously and try to make them feel as fresh as possible." Well, you failed. Because this this isn't fresh, my guy. It's spilled beans that you bought in 2012 because you thought an apocalypse was happening, and now you're making us eat it because you're saying that it's still good for another week. And then he goes on to make some very offensive statements. I would say the audience is always right, which means never under or overestimate them. If you build it, they will come. If you make it for them. Why offensive? Well, first of all, I like to be overestimated. It makes me feel smarter than I am. Second, what does it mean the audience is always right? I know I'm not always right. Like if I say the birds only fly because they're afraid ants will attack them and bite their toes. That doesn't sound right, does it? Does it? It could be. Why are birds flying? Do we actually know? It's probably wrong, but you get my point. But if they really did care about what the viewer thought, then they just would stop making these movies that just aren't good or aren't even scary anymore. But hey, I get it. You gotta say those words because otherwise some weird YouTuber wannabe like myself turns on their camera and starts talking about how you said, well, screw the viewer, we're making money, baby. Which, of course, you didn't. He didn't. Not technically. But if you're gonna do more Conjuring movies, which we all know you will, at least consider giving this guy a spin-off. You know, the cop from the first movie, and we see him here again in the fourth movie flipping burgers, which just feels so right. I don't know, man. There's something about this guy, his calmness, his charm, his way of talking that just grabs you, you know? Like he steals the scene he's in. Honestly, it doesn't even have to be horror. It could just be the police who had it all before the exorcism of his life. And I don't know, just make him do police work and on the poster call it the cop from the Conjuring Universe. He was cursed before he even knew it. I'm sure it'll sell millions. And hey, don't forget to credit me. But ultimately, the reality remains that it's just easier and safer to recycle certain elements of a hit horror movie and just recreate a similar one than to take a risk on a new one. It's guaranteed money, low risk, high reward. And if it keeps working, you know, if all the studios come to an agreement that this is the way, and they keep copy-pasting the same story into a slightly different home with a slightly different demon, we might just run out of fresh and unique horror movies altogether. And that's pretty scary, actually. Good job, studios, you win. That's a scary thought to live with. Thank you. You've just watched Fax Machine 9000. Thank you so much.